is going to be holding a webinar on Saturday, November 23rd, just to keep people updated. So whoever hasn't submitted a U4, they're encouraging everybody to do it. Also, they announced that they will now be charging people a fee for, the end of the year that you have to do your renewal. Usually if you pass your security by December, you have to pay. And the same thing if you pass it in January, you still have to pay that fee. So the Primerica is going to bypass that. They will talk to your RVP, and if your RVP says that you can be appointed in 2014, then they'll wait until next year. So, but
Which for a lot of people, they're thinking, oh, I don't want to pay the $500. I'll just
they're waived. Primerica is waived.
We're just going to hold off until January.
Exactly,
And you can take
January
the test
1st.
this month.
Then you don't know
You
until
can't
next
just write
November.
any business until next.
Exactly, right. Exactly. Thank you, Igor, for that. So even though you pass it, you will not be appointed until January 1st.
What time is the webinar? The 23rd?
It's 11 Eastern time, so which is 9 o'clock our time. And that goes until 3 p.m., which is 1 o'clock our time.
Thank you.
All right, no problem.
All right, that was good. I knew about the appointment thing, but that webinar. So they're gonna have to check that out, right?
Oh, it's good.
Nobody's got. Well, I shouldn't say that. When I hear Steve talk about his stuff, I was like, man, how did he know somebody with $700 million? Right?
It's a friend's dad.
Here's
It's a
the
friend's
thing, though.
father-in-law.
I guarantee if I feel like that, a lot of people feel like that. Like, oh yeah, if you're Steve, this is great.
Well, no, I'm not getting the guy's account.
No, I know that, dude. I know that. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times you get up here and you're so polished, and so you have all these high roller clients, and somebody like me is saying, I don't know anybody with 2 nickels. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of us can relate to that, and that's why I'm bringing it up. Right. And so what we think is, oh, that's good for him, but I don't need to do that. And I think that's a huge mistake. And that's one of the things that Omar talked about. He mentioned Brendan in particular. He says, I know in Utah people don't have rollovers and they don't have money, Brendan, but everywhere else they do, kind of tongue in cheek. Because a lot of the times we say that, oh, people here don't have money or da-da-da-da-da. The money's out there. I sat down with somebody the other day, and it was a referral of a friend. They had $300,000, and they literally didn't know anything. Like, they didn't know what a 401k even was. They didn't know. And so people need our help. I think sometimes when we hear about these, we think these people know more than we do, and we get confused with words like diversification and allocation and all these different Asian words. We don't really need to know too much, and I like the way that Omar did it. And honestly, I told Steve when we came home, I don't think it's too big of a departure from how he's taught me to do the securities with the buckets. And if you guys don't have this brochure, if you're securities licensed, you can order them for free, which is cool. Because they say Invesco, so they can pick up the bill on them. And the Invesco stuff is all of the, oh shoot, I forgot to put that grid. It's all the stuff that Omar uses. So when you use Omar's grid, which I forgot to print out. You do? Okay, so basically, when we get done with everything, it's very, very simple. Like, they'll fit a specific grid. You follow the grid and say, okay, this is the fund that they need. Anyway, it's all the Invesco stuff. So this brochure, plus this brochure is also done by Tom Aminikarazi, which is part of the success system, which is part of our hierarchy stuff from Chris Howard. And what's that?
That's the.
Give me?
Yeah, that's the. Is it the one?
Oh yeah. Right. So I'll hold on to that for a second because I'm going to show people that when I get done. But anyway, this is a great supplemental brochure. And you don't have to spend any money on it. So I would recommend people get that. What's it? Oh, don't do it now. Don't order them right now. Okay, so what he does, and he says this too, he says, and I'll just piggyback on what Steve said. When you have an investment client, every 90 days they get advertising with your name on it because they get their quarterly statements. and it comes to their house and it says, Igor, this is your account, your financial representative is Nick Thomas, and so that's top of mind awareness. They're sending them that information, and if any time within the last week or two, oh shoot, I had this and I gotta call this guy. Anyway, it's got your number and your information right there. And think about this. When we tell these stories about how big our crusade is, Brendan sent out a text, and it was an end of month promotion, because sometimes during the end of month everybody's saying, go write a policy, go write a policy. He wrote a policy on end of month as a favor. A guy died within the next month. He paid out $300,000 anyway. If somebody dies and we have helped them with life insurance, that's phenomenal. But what if they don't die? Because chances are they're not going to die. If we sell them a life insurance policy and they don't die, have we helped them? We've helped them sleep better at night. I'm not saying that it's worthless and it's a waste of money. Obviously, that peace of mind. But if they buy a 20-year term and they don't invest any money, now they're 20 years later, and for lack of a better term, they could be screwed if they haven't saved any money. And you need to understand that, because that's what the cash value people say about A.L. Williams and now about Primerica. Well, I understand, but what you do is you take somebody from a $300 a month cash value policy, convince them they only need $50 a month, which in term insurance they do, and now what do they do with the difference of $250? They don't invest it. And so they look at us and say, oh yeah, you guys stand on a higher moral ground thinking you're so much better than everybody, but in realization what you do is you take somebody with the small amount that we would give them at retirement to no amount at retirement. So it's I think we're doing people a huge disservice if we don't invest the difference. It's not buy term and buy term. It's not buy term and have fun. It's buy term and invest the difference. You obviously have to get a license to do that. He gave this stat too, which I think was, I don't know if he made this up. He said 92% of investment licensed agents are able to retire comfortably. That's not in Primerica, that's in the industry. So that says, and we show the statistic, 90% of Americans will end up 65, what?
Broke.
Dependent or having to work. Those are the financial stats as per
Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah, the Department of Health and Human Services. Well, what he said is 92% of those with an investment license retire comfortably. That's a pretty big, that's a pretty good incentive to get an investment license. And I think all that says is education is powerful. Because those people don't have anything else than anybody else other than the education to know what to do with the money. So I think sharing those statistics with clients, and then he says, look, here's the deal. If you want to go get a life insurance license, or if you want to get an auto and home insurance license, if you want to get a health insurance license, or if you want to get any license, you can go and get those. You can go online, you can research where to get them, how to get them, real estate, all those kind of licenses. If you want an investment license, you have to be sponsored and affiliated with a brokerage firm, a broker-dealer. Most broker-dealers are not going to hire you based upon your current situation and background.
They wouldn't hire a part-timer.
Plus, they're not going to hire somebody part-time, just hobby time in it.
No.
So if you want an investment license, and if you want to be 92% chance of retiring comfortably, you really don't have too many options. And we're willing to pay for all those licenses. I mean, if you really lay that out for people and help them understand, it's pretty powerful. So, having said that, he says this is what he does on his first appointment, and he goes through he says he uses a 4-page presentation from Chris Howard that he's used for the last 20 years. And he says it doesn't really matter what presentation you use, because at the end of the day, they're all pretty much the same thing. Talks about the credibility, the background of the company, what we've done, where we're at, and then it identifies the 2 biggest problems. The first biggest problem, he says, that his presentation identifies, and probably most of ours, is debt. And we all know that. It's not a big secret to try to convince somebody that people are in debt, right? The second biggest problem, guesses? People have no money, no savings. He says people really don't know how to save, or they don't have the knowledge of that, which, yeah, you gotta have money, but I talk about this a lot of the time. We know we don't have, as Americans, middle-class Americans, the financial education. We don't care about that because we don't have money to invest anyway. So yeah, Nick, I know I don't know what a 401k is, but why the crap do I care? Because I don't have money to invest in one of these things anyways. Now, if I have an extra $500 in my pocket, now I might be thinking, okay, I might want to look to see what a 401k is. I want to look to see what an IRA is, right? It's just like a new vehicle. You're not going to go look to see the gas mileage on it, what it costs, the sticker price, and all that stuff if you're not in the market. Does that make sense? So he goes through the presentation, and his point is to get a phenom. His point is to get a phenom. What's a phenom? An FNA. He says that's what he does. He uses the phenom, the FNA. Well, he said that he's gone to some people and he's done his trainings and okay, this is awesome. What's a phenom? And he's really literally had people ask, what's a phenom? So that's an FNA. Oh, an analysis, right. You can't, it's just like Steve said. People have been sold a product based upon what they could afford, which is it does not correlate to what they need. Sometimes it does.